that if something is urgent, it has to be important. Hi, my name is Daria. Welcome to Scrum Masters video series where I give you practical tips on how to build awesome teams. January is the month of planning. We often set our goals for the next year and make some resolutions, and I was doing that as well. Now, as we step into the next month and the rest of the year, I wanted to talk about how you can prioritize your time to help you, your team, and your organization to achieve your goals better. And I'm not talking about how can you prioritize your product backlog or how to measure value of the items in your product backlog, but more about how can you optimize the limited amount of time you and your team have to be more successful. When we talk about prioritization, we often think in one dimension. Is it important or not? And it makes a lot of sense. However, often when we only look at it from one angle, there are other things that creep into the important pile for all the wrong reasons. And a very common example of that is something urgent. We tend to think that if something is urgent, it has to be important. However, it often leads to us getting into a firefighting mode and only focusing on the urgent things and never getting a chance to look at the situation in general as a whole. So, as a Scrum Master, there are various tools that you can use to help your team and your organization to recognize what is really important and what is not. And here's a simple model that can help you. So instead of just having one axis in here, important and not important, we will add a second one, and as you have guessed, is it urgent or not urgent? This is a tool that is known as the Eisenhower decision matrix, and most likely you've seen it before, and today I want to look at it from the Scrum point of view. Scrum wants us to focus on important and not urgent. We achieve that focus through backlog refinements, through collecting feedback from our clients and stakeholders in sprint reviews, as well as setting sprint goals in sprint planning. Now, if something is not important and not urgent, well, you should drop it. There is an Agile principles that tells us that. Simplicity, the amount of work not done, is essential, where we shouldn't be focusing on the work that is not important and not urgent. A couple of times I worked with teams who had 300 or more items in their product backlog. And I remember helping one of the product owners to go through the product backlog and review what items are important and which ones are not. And I was very interested to see that a lot of the items sitting in this backlog were just wish list items, kind of nice to have. Things that the team could be working on if they had nothing else to do. Well, clearly those items should not be sitting in the product backlog. And as a Scrum Master, you should help your team and your product owner to let go of these items. Remove them from the product backlog. Archive them, do something so they do not appear, do not distract the team from focusing on what's really important. If something is urgent and important, you better get onto that right away. But it also is a good opportunity to inspect and adapt. Ask your team, what went wrong? Why did this thing suddenly become urgent? Wasn't it important before? Most of the time, things that appear here all of a sudden were actually sitting before in this quadrant, and over time, they moved into the urgent quadrant because we did not put enough focus on them when they were not urgent. So it's a good way to sit down and reflect with your team to understand what happened and plan for the work that is not urgent and important better. And your ultimate goal with this quadrant is to minimize the work that is sitting here by trying to move as much work into here. Use your sprint retrospectives to think about that and to talk about how you can plan for the important work better. Now, the last and the most confusing quadrant of them all is the urgent and not important. A lot of people think that this quadrant does not actually exist, because if something is urgent, it has to be important, right? However, in reality, it's just the traditional way of working and traditional management styles that have created this illusion. The illusion of importance based on urgency. Here is a good story to illustrate that. I was once working with a team, and in mid-sprint, another team came to us and said that they have this extremely urgent and important thing that we need to work on. We basically needed to drop everything we planned for, stop everything we were doing, and switch to the new work that just came in. So I went in to investigate, where is this deadline coming from? So why do we need it by Friday? Because we need to do some extra work on it and give it to Team 3 by next Friday. And why does Team 3 need it by next Friday? Well, because they need to do some other work on it and get it ready by next Friday. And why do they need it by next Friday? I don't know, someone said it needs to be done. After questioning a whole line of people that were involved in this, I figured out that this arbitrary deadline was put into place just to make this work seem important. However, it was actually much less important than some other work that we were doing. So in this case, if you find some work that is sitting in this quadrant that is urgent but not important, what you can do is to delegate it. Find a way to minimize the time that your team spends on it. In this case, my team was able to provide the necessary documentation to the requesters, as well as involve the supporting teams to help them out during this process without really involving the team and breaking our sprint goal. So here you go, this is a very simple model that you can use as a Scrum Master to help your team and your organization to figure out what is really important and why, and to bring more focus on important and non-urgent things by using Scrum that is already in place. I have a question for you, and it's a tough one, so I'll be eager to see your replies. As a Scrum Master, what are the stances and activities that you can undertake in each of the 4 quadrants to help your product owner, your Scrum team, and your management team to plan more effectively in Scrum context? Leave your comments below and subscribe to this YouTube channel as well as ScrumMaster.com newsletter, as I will be sharing even more insightful tips in the future. I hope to see you next time. Cheers and Scrum on!